years. If they can't take the FFLs away, they are going to limit the number. If they can't take the guns away, they're going to limit the number of places where law-abiding Americans can go purchase their firearms. Today, we'll examine the actions by ATF that led to the untimely and unnecessary death of Brian Malinowski. At this time, I want to offer my condolences to the members of Mr. Malinowski's family. Some of them are here with us today. We're also joined by Congressman Hill, who I mentioned earlier, who represents Mr. Malinowski's and his family and has sought justice on their behalf. In the early morning hours of March 19th, 2024, armed ATF agents arrived at the Malinowski family home in at least 10 vehicles to execute a search warrant. According to the warrant, the ATF alleged that Mr. Malinowski was selling firearms without a license. Footage from the Malinowski's doorbell camera shows ATF agents approaching the house with riot shields and subsequently disabling the camera to prevent their conduct from being recorded. Upon hearing the commotion and fearful of a home intrusion, Mr. Malinowski awoke and prepared to defend his family. Mr. Malinowski encountered what he and his wife believed to be home intruders. An exchange of gunfire ensued. Mr. Malinowski was shot in the head, and he died from his wounds 2 days later. The circumstances of Mr. Malinowski's death raised questions about whether the ATF followed proper protocol during the execution of this search warrant. DOJ policy and President Biden's executive order 14074 requires ATF agents, including those who conducted the search warrant on the Malinowski family home, to wear active body-worn cameras during the execution of that warrant. The department, however, has since confirmed to the Malinowski family that ATF agents were not wearing body cameras during the raid, a clear violation of the department policy. It is also unclear whether ATF agents complied with Justice Department policy on no-knock entries. In explaining the rationale for this policy, Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco noted that, quote, because of the risk posed to both law enforcement and civilians during the execution of no-knock warrants, it is important that this authority be exercised in only the most compelling circumstances. Furthermore, Ms. Monaco directed the use of no-knock entries should be restricted to instances in which an agent has reasonable grounds to believe that at the time of the warrant, that the warrant is sought, that knocking and announcing the agent's presence would create an imminent threat of physical violence to the agent or to another person. It's not clear if the raid was a no-knock encounter because, in part, the ATF agents disabled the Malinowski's home camera. ATF has yet to explain why it resorted to a risky pre-drawn entry of Mr. Malinowski's home when it could have peacefully executed the warrant while he was away from his residence. I think that's a huge question. But the ATF wanted Mr. Malinowski to be home when they executed the search warrant. We know ATF abandoned a previous attempt to execute the search warrant when they learned Mr. Malinowski wasn't home. They were actually primed and ready to go the week before, but didn't go because he wasn't there. Why did they need him to be in the home, as this was a search warrant and not an arrest warrant? In fact, there were numerous other less dangerous options available to the ATF. The ATF knew his pattern of life. They could have chosen to wait for Mr. Malinowski to leave for work and safely approached him after he had exited his home. The ATF could have conducted the raid after Mr. Malinowski left for work and had other agents meet him at his work, where he was not allowed to carry a firearm. The ATF could have waited until he was gone and asked Mrs. Malinowski to call him back after the house was secure. ATF agents could have given Mr. Malinowski more time to answer the door during the knock and announce, so he knew it was the police. Since the ATF chose to ignore their own policy, not wear body cameras, we will never know if they gave him the 10 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever to answer the door. And tomorrow, in front of the full Judiciary Committee, Director Dettelbach will have a chance to explain the actions of the ATF. But today we look forward to hearing from our witnesses. I want to thank them all for being here. And I now yield back and now recognize the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you to the chairman. Good morning. And thank you to the witnesses and the others that are here and joining us at this hearing. Last week, after Trump insider and convicted criminal Steve Bannon demanded that Chairman Jordan do more to protect Donald Trump, and this committee answered the call. It's no accident that last week, this committee called as witness a former defense attorney for Donald Trump in the classified documents case. Rudy Giuliani's former lawyer and the attorney who has written and filed Chairman Jordan's amicus briefs to the Supreme Court to support Donald Trump's many indictments. Republicans rolled their eyes and snickered when I noted, as the ranking Democrat on the subcommittee, that the plain goal of that hearing was to influence the New York hush money trial against Donald Trump. Just so the public is clear how closely this committee is trying to link Donald J. Trump's criminal and civil matters and use this committee to act as outside defense special counsel, 2 days ago, Robert Costello, a Republican witness from last week's hearing, was called by Donald Trump as a witness for the defense in that very trial and used his same manic, rambling testimony that he gave in this subcommittee. Thankfully now, maybe the chairman and GOP members won't continue to be blasted by Fox News and other MAGA news outlets and blogs for not doing enough with the committee to support the former president. Costello got to try out his testimony. Defense counsel thought it was good enough to appear as a witness on the stand last week. I know the American people don't believe that this is an appropriate use of the $20 million allocated to this committee. Holding
I
6 full
knew
hearings
there
to
was a hidden
bolster
agenda
disproven
to Jim
lies
Jordan.
that the
Just
government is
knew.
colluding with social media companies to target conservatives, calling in an anti-Semitic, anti-vax, racist conspiracy theorist who claims a worm ate part of his brain as a witness. Others just spread the widely debunked fringe claims about the deep state or have personnel grievances from appropriate firing from their former employers that the committee offers them time to air here. This is what Republicans have made of the committee process, but I guess it goes along with their inability to effectively legislate in this Congress as well. You know, people often wonder, with my courtroom litigation background, having been prosecuting assistant district attorney, if I enjoy these hearings. I have to tell you, every time I get a notice of a hearing for this committee, my stomach hurts because I'm disturbed by the use of this legislative time to prop up a failed individual, one individual, a loser in elections, a disastrous dictatorial wannabe in governing, a perennially bankrupt, false revenue inflating con artist in business, and a cheater in marriage even. That's who the Republicans want us to spend our time on, supporting Donald Trump, rather than the American people. Today, we're going a step further. We are somehow having a hearing to protect the gun lobby, to prop up Donald Trump's pro-death agenda, when more than 100 Americans die of gun violence every day. We have colleagues who have lost friends, classmates, mass shooters. Some of us in this Congress see the scourge of illegal guns coming across state and city lines to ravage communities with gun violence and death of youth. But these deaths happens everywhere, haunting every corner of the American experience, and without a robust federal law enforcement and ATF and FBI, Americans will die at a faster rate. I know that the Virgin Islands, my home, our federal law enforcement play a critical role in combating the scourge of drugs and guns, trafficking. Without these agencies, or with more guns available to bad people, my region where I live and all of America will be even more dangerous. Families of gun violence victims have their lives ripped apart and turned upside down in a moment. None of that is helped or made less common occurrence when we attack and undermine the ATF and the FBI. Republicans on this committee simply, it's not a matter of caring about those mass victims. Families in Uvalde identified their children by shoes because they could not identify them by the faces that they had looked at every day. It's easy to become desensitized in politics, but if that doesn't hurt you, if you don't feel anything for that, God help us all. There have already been 27 deaths from school shootings this year alone. Almost 4,000 children and teens are shot and killed every year, 15,000 more injured. Guns are the #1 cause of death in children between the age of 1 and 18. The first cause of death, guns. Not car accidents, suffocation, drowning, poisoning, cancer. #1, guns. an entirely preventable death if guns were in fact well regulated. Instead of addressing this real problem, and instead of listening to 3/4 of gun owners, 3/4 that support common sense gun safety laws, we're continuing with this. They brought us here right after Police Week in furtherance of a mission to defund and dismantle the agency trying to save our children, save Americans from gun violence. The ATF is a central agency dedicated to stopping the source of gun violence. Its agents ensure the background check laws are followed. They keep guns out of the hands of criminals. They investigate gun crimes. They prevent mass shootings, school shootings. They support local law enforcement and gun tracing and enforcement efforts. They do the vital work we so desperately need. We're going to hear today about ATF overreach, and especially about
This is
the
a
death
stunning,
of Mr.
stunning
Malinowski.
opening by Stacey Plaskett.
That
I
is
knew
a
Jim Jordan was up to
tragic
something.
loss of
Please,
life.
please,
Every
in the
loss
comment
of life
section
is
below,
tragic.
give us your
Our
reaction.
sympathies,
Thank you.
all of us, I believe, go out to the family. While an investigation is ongoing it's inappropriate to be drawing conclusions before the results of an investigation are released. We do know from affidavits from the court that it was alleged that Mr. Malinowski was a mass gun trafficker, and we know that some of the guns he sold were used to commit crimes. We know that ATF agents were serving a legitimate search warrant. Beyond that, we await the results of an investigation, and this committee shouldn't seek to influence that. Let's not be mistaken. Republicans are not here today because they're concerned about the tragic loss of life during a police raid. You know why I know that? Because they have not uttered a word about a Florida deputy shooting and killing Senior Airman Roger Fortsman in his apartment just a week ago. You know why I know that? Because they don't say anything. They don't say the name Breonna Taylor, who in 2020 was shot and killed in her home through an inappropriate police raid. They don't want to talk about the gun violence impacting communities or how across the country, a Black American is shot and wounded every 11 minutes. They don't want to talk about the interstate gun trafficking that's fueling violence in Illinois, where on an average, someone is killed every 6 hours with a gun, and where Black individuals are 38 times more likely than white individuals to die by gun homicide, triple the national average. So while homicides dropped by 13% in Chicago last year, that doesn't mean that people aren't still dying. Those victims deserve to be more than statistics. We don't talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about other kinds of police raids. They want to talk about this police raid on Mr. Malinowski because it fits their narrative about how to dismantle the ATF. That's what this is about. Don't let them fool you. They don't care. And when they do care, it's not about every American. It's only about a specific type of American that they're concerned about those deaths. Because I don't hear those other names being called by them. Ms. Sampson, Mr. Graham, I want to thank our witnesses for being there today. Ms. Sampson, your expertise and vast experience in gun violence prevention spaces is truly impressive. I'm confident it will be invaluable as we examine those issues here today. Mr. Graham, I'd also like to thank you for your more than 37 years of public service at the ATF.